Street View Podcast is part of the Dallas Public Library's Homeless Engagement Initiative, dedicated to increasing community awareness of issues related to homelessness. The opinions expressed are solely those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Dallas Public Library or the City of Dallas.
How do you want to see it? What do you want to do? You got it all figured out, straight from your cubicle. Life's a musical, maybe a carousel. How do you want to see it? What do you want to do? Perception starts with selection. The same streets you walk on, they carry their own view. This is Street View.
Most Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for Jesus Christ. Thank you for exhibiting humility to us. Thank you for reaching out, using your divinity to meet us where we are. We come now with bowed down head, recognizing who you are. You're an awesome God. You're an amazing God. You see us for who we are. You love us. You keep us. You protect us. You provide for us, and we don't even have to ask for it. You said if we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, it shall be given. Therefore, God, right now we're asking for love, real love, not fake, not fraudulent, not phony, God. We're asking that you just keep us centered on what real love is, and manifest yourself through us as people all around this globe, everywhere, God. Just show yourself mighty and strong. Your presence is awesome, and we're grateful to have you with us here now. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. All my listeners, what's happening? How y'all doing out there? Rashad Anthony Dickerson in the building. Got the squad with me, got the whole team. Y'all get your pens and your pads. We have a phenomenal individual in the building. So many times in life, we wait till somebody passes away to tell them that they are legendary. And that's horrible. I think we should let people know their worth and their value while they're here. So on the show today, I have a guy. And this guy is one of the greatest, most productive, get it done, highly influential spirits here in Dallas. This man, the one, the only Larry James. Now, before we get into the conversation with Larry James, I'm going to give y'all a little backstory about Rashad and why he's so influential to me. So I'm a young man, been through my trials and my tribulations, came to Dallas to get a fresh new start. And I ran into so many different resources. Me being hungry for it, I got to see CitySquare. I don't know if people know what CitySquare is. When I talk to people on the streets, they don't know what CitySquare is. They get it confused with City Place. CitySquare is a social justice agency committed to fighting poverty. Man, that's deep. That's a lot of words. So let me put it to you like this. CitySquare is a resource center. If you need anything from clothes to counseling to job training to, well, let's stop there. I did job training there. I did job training for 12 weeks, and I learned plumbing, welding, electrical, HVAC, hazardous waste, forklift operations, rigging and flagging, CPR certified, OSHA 40. You know, I got all kind of stuff. Got it for free. Got a bus pass to get to school. Got Jason's Deli every day for lunch. And made sure I had coffee and Nutri-Grain bars in the morning. You can't beat that with a baseball bat. CitySquare also offers other resources. They had a hot team at one time. Man, if you could imagine it, if you want to say, okay, I'm in poverty, where do I go to get resources? CitySquare is where you want to go. Just reaching out, and they have such a wonderful and loving staff. They're so nurturing and kind, and they meet you where you at. They're so humble. So for me specifically, I go. And when I got there and I recognized this is an actual resource or institution of resources that I could pass on to people that's actually trying to help, that's trying to benefit people. I took it and ran with it and went all over the city, jumping on buses and telling people, hey, man, if you want a fresh start, bro, a fair shake, go to CitySquare. I'm going to tell you who you go see. You go see Daniel for Work Pass, or if you want to go over there for Drive to Success, which is a automotive body class for 9 months, go over there and see Daniel again. If you want to go and do the computer courses and learn about those type of things, go see Mr. Charles. I mean, you know, go see Miss Harrington. And so, you know, I go up this ladder and I graduate from the program and I come to find out that it's ran by 3 preachers. Wow. What an awesome tale, because what happens is, well, what does that put us as church folks? Okay, another story. So all of that stuff really, really affected me, and I saw that it could affect a majority of people, so I decided to take it on. I never really knew who was really like the top gun, who was the top of the chart, who was actually, how was it trickling down, who had the vision and the inspiration to continue to perpetuate something so beautiful, in a sense, almost holy. And that guy sitting in the chair next to me. And I'd like for you guys to meet Mr. Larry James. Please, Mr. James, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here in the house with you.
Thank you for coming.
And with the whole team here. I don't know really what to tell you about me. I grew up in the area. I grew up in Richardson. My dad worked for the city for a number of years, and then entered into a partnership with some other people and was a real estate developer on the west side of town. I had no desire really growing up to be involved in ministry, but got involved when I was in college, and that's a whole nother story. But I served churches, in parishes for almost 25 years.
Wow.
And I used to tell that my last congregation was in Richardson. I was there for 14 years as a senior minister. And I found myself saying things to those people like, I'm believing more and more and less. The things, it's just kind of a reductionist spiritual journey. And that really all that matters is how we treat people and how we take care of each other and how we realize what Dr. King said when he talked about the beloved community.
Right.
And that in fact is the value set that defines what I'm trying to do.
I like that.
And it makes it real simple. I don't argue about religion with anybody.
Yeah.
Except a mutual friend of ours who makes me argue about it, right? So I guess there are some people who make a game out of that, but
yes.
It's real clear to me that we're called to alleviate the pain and suffering of poverty,
right,
and to work for systemic solutions that get at more just and equitable approaches. But then in the midst of it all, not to surrender joy or friendship.
Right.
And that we don't want to professionalize the poverty industry. We want to humanize our relations with each other, and so we're in a mutually reciprocal, beneficial relationship if things are right. If I'm not receiving from you in our partnership, and you're not receiving from me in an equal kind of fashion, we're on the wrong track. And charity is not the solution.
Right.
So friendship is, and justice is.
And is this all in the book that you have?
It's in the book. It's in the book.
Why don't you tell us about the book?
Well, that's an interesting story as well. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma about 4 years ago, working with a friend up there, doing some consulting about some community development work that was going on in Tulsa. And it was late one afternoon, and we went out for a cup of coffee in a break period. And I just got started talking about all the memories and stories and learning that I had received from the community since coming to CitySquare. And I said, I got to find a way to get all this out. And he was actually an editor. He was a book editor in a dual career thing going on. And so he was an editor. And he told me, he said, take off 1 month and don't do anything but write. And just dump all this. You don't worry so much about style. Don't worry so much about formats or grammar or arrangement, or just get all this stuff that's troubling you out. Just get it out. And so I took off a month, and every day, Monday to Friday, and some Saturdays and a few Sundays, I would get up at my normal time, 6 o'clock or so, and I would drink a cup of coffee with my wife,
yes, and
she'd go to work, and then I would go out on the back porch, and I wrote every day from 7:30, 8 o'clock till 4 or 5 o'clock.
Wow.
And I just dumped it.
So,
and when I got through, I had almost 500 pages of typed double-spaced text, and the book only published about half of it. And so, but I got it out, right? And then I turned it over to this editor, and he helped me with the format, and there we go.
So you say this book we're talking about is The Wealth of the Poor by Larry M. James. The Wealth of the Poor. How did y'all come up with the title? How do you equate that into your everyday life?
Yeah. Well, when I first came to Central Dallas Ministries, that's what it was called originally, we had a little food pantry on Haskell. Right. And frankly, that's about all we had. We had an evening clinic, a 3-hour evening health clinic that was staffed by volunteer physicians. We had a fledgling life skills program that was much less well developed compared to what we have now. And I had about 15 to 20 volunteers who worked in that food pantry or food distribution center, which was sort of the essence of what we did. And not to be unkind, but they were older. Right. They all looked like me. They were white. Okay. All of them lived in suburban communities or in the park cities. They were coming down, by golly, to do their duty to God and country, and they were burned out. Right. They weren't connecting really to the community. I can give you many examples of that. I'm a coffee freak. I love coffee, right? So the first thing I did when I got there was I bought a big industrial-sized coffee pot, right? And I put it right in the middle of the interview room on Haskell. And so the first morning, hey, I'm making coffee. And a longtime volunteer walked over to me and put her arm on my shoulder, and she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm making coffee for our guests." Because I figure, I like coffee. If I'm going to be drinking coffee, I want to offer it to them. Right. Maybe we can have some conversation around the coffee. Oh. And she said, "Don't you know that if you make coffee, these people will never leave?" Okay. And so I told my wife that night, we're about a half a bubble off plum. We've forgotten the real purpose, right? Yeah. Later, the matriarch of the church that founded the nonprofit, her position was the welcome desk. I have no idea how she got the welcome desk, but she had the welcome desk. And a guy who looked just like Willie Nelson. Yeah. Matter of fact, I see him all the time. He lives in my neighborhood. He walked in, a crevice face, long braided gray hair. Right. He leans over to sign in at the welcome desk, and she spots a pack of Camel cigarettes in his pocket. Mm. And I heard her say, I'll never forget it, if you wouldn't spend your money on those nasty old cigarettes, you wouldn't have to come in here and take our food out. Mm. So we fired her. Yeah. But there were a number of people who really needed to go, right? And I didn't know enough. All I knew was Jesus loved poor people, and I needed to do something about it.
That's cool.
That's all I knew. I never had a social work class. Right. I taught a social work class at Pepperdine one time, but I never had a social work class. I didn't know what I was doing. So I think God took mercy on me.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. You bring God up, and you also talked about knowing the people. Like that whole story is an experience that you had. You know them. Let me ask you. You seem real down to earth. I have stories of you meeting at a place called The Corner. Oh, yeah. How is it that you meet at The Corner? Also, you walk the fine line between being one of the people and being very, very political. Having a political sway. Yeah.
Well, you have to use your influence as you can. Okay. It's like water seeks its own level. There's an equalizing force there, and it's going to seek its own level. When I see people on the corner who are there because the rules are kind of turned against them, or because they've made a couple of mistakes, but so have I, and I'm not on the corner. The system's kind of set up to penalize and punish folks who are quote unquote poor. And I don't look at people that way. I think we're all rich and we're all poor just in different ways. It'd be very hard for me to say that you're poor. Yeah. I mean, you've already shared a wealth with me this morning, that I need to get a hold of, right? So, but because of that understanding, anytime I can advance the ball or open a door or be involved with people who kick a door down to advance people's ability to be human and to have abundant life, that's my job.
I feel that.
So I sometimes make people uncomfortable and aggravated, but I want to tell you about Josephine Ortiz. In the very beginning, when I didn't know what to do, I was interviewing 3 Hispanic families. Mm-hmm. It was a group interview, which I understand is really a silly thing to do. But these 3 wonderful moms with their beautiful kids, they were strangers to each other, but they were all arrayed in front of me. They were pooling their limited English to overcome my abject stupidity because I can't speak Spanish, right? And we weren't getting very far. I knew they needed something. I didn't know what. Josefina Ortiz, 62 years old, who had already been assisted. I'd interviewed her, bilingual grandmother from Oak Cliff. She came walking by carrying her groceries. And I stopped her. And I asked the most important question you can ask somebody.
What's that?
Can you help me? I said, ma'am, can you help me? And she said, sure. What do you need me to do? She was surprised that anybody asked her to help them in that place where all the answers were, right?
Exactly.
On the other side of the desk in the interview. You know what I'm saying? So I said, I need your help, ma'am. And she said, well, certainly. So she set her groceries down. She didn't really translate the interview like I'd asked her. She conducted it because she knew the ropes. She didn't need to. She just did it. And we figured out that one family needed some utility assistance and one family needed some rental assistance and all of them wanted some food. Well, by the time we got through with all that, these women were getting to know each other really well and their kids were all playing. And so we did all that stuff.
Community.
We provided that assistance. And they left happy. And of course, I'm literally down on my knees thanking Miss Ortiz for her assistance. When she gets to the door to leave, she turns back to me and she says, and this is a life-changing moment, she said, Larry, I could come back tomorrow and help you if you'd like for me to. And I said, well, you can see I need your help. Please do. So Josefina came back tomorrow for 9 years.
For 9 years.
And the message I got spiritually was, you don't know what you're doing. You're looking at the neighborhood completely wrong. You look at it only as filled with need, and it's really full of wealth. There are needs, but there's also wealth. And the main wealth is the human capital, right?
I love that.
And so we changed our whole system. We put in one line at the bottom of our interview sheet that said, can you come back and help us? We went from having 15 to 20 volunteers who were old, burned out, and looked like me, to having 300 community people.
Wow.
And that became the think tank that created CitySquare.
You know,
that's the whole thing, right? We listen to people closest to the problem.
Okay, so when Edmonds was here, he said, in order to find the issues that are the problem with the homeless, we need to dig in the homeless. Hey, y'all stay tuned. I listened to the interview you did on Think, K-E-R-A, Think, which is another podcast. What's the host's name? Chris Boyd. Yeah. Phenomenal. It was awesome. It was jam-packed with all kind of information. Talking to a good friend of mine, Larry Johnson, I told him about you and what you do, and he says, I know him very well. And I told him what I thought was that you wanted to give the people so much information that you reached out. You just wanted to continually pour on them the knowledge that they needed to understand where they were and what the options were. I think that's very, very important. So one of the things I've been looking into is you and some of the things CitySquare is into. You guys are opening up an opportunity center and a set of apartment complexes called the Cottages. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the Opportunity Center is part of actually about a 7-year strategic plan that involves us consolidating many of our resources into one campus. It's about 53,000 square feet, and it will focus on workforce training and placement, health and nutrition. We're going to have tenants there. Lift, Literacy Instruction for Texas, is the biggest literacy outfit in town. They also do GED training. They do English as second language. Workforce Solutions of Greater Dallas, which is the Texas Workforce Commission, the employment office. Right. They're going to be there as well. Right across the breezeway from our Work Pass Training Center, that'll be there as well. Our big food distribution center will be there. Our AmeriCorps team will be there. Our summer lunch team will be there. And then we're going to have other partner agencies. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving here to go to a meeting today with a company that does a hardware certification training for computer maintenance, repair, and building. And so plus we're going to have other agencies there. Health and Human Services will be there. Some consumer credit counseling people will be there. All kinds of resources. One-stop shop. That's the Opportunity Center. Across the street, the Cottages will actually be 50 single-family homes, about 400 square feet cottages with a private bedroom, obviously, private bath, kitchen in each one of them, big front porch, and they're arranged in sixes where the front porches all face each other, and then each six, if you will, looks out onto a common green. We'll have high-touch concierge services on site and mental health services on site 7 days a week. It costs the county, and these houses are for some of the most expensive homeless persons to Dallas County, those who are chronically homeless and who are also evidencing some sort of mental health issues and who've had some involvement with the criminal justice system.
So, I get around, and so I hear a lot of different things. I'm hearing the people that are picking for these cottages are Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance, and different Metro Care.
Yeah, Metro Care is a partner who will provide the mental health services, but the selection will be done by Dallas County Criminal Justice and the partners who are part of this effort, including Metro Dallas Homeless Alliance.
So how are they going to be picked? Are we cherry picking?
No. We know by name the top 250 most expensive homeless persons to the county. The average cost per person on that list of 250 is $40,000 a year. We can provide housing and all these services for less than $15,000 a year. So we're going to get 50 people off that list. I told one brother out there on the corner, it's just right by the corner, I said, we're not screening people out. Right. We're screening people in.
Right.
And so
it's typically frustrating, man, when you're homeless and you have to deal with the resources, and not everybody's geared to passing resources out. And so, it's to have a level of optimism says you have a lot of character in a situation like this. Because if you're homeless, you're saying 50? 50. So, wow. If I'm homeless, and I don't know the total number of homeless individuals in Dallas, but
it's a whole lot more than that. One of the intentions of this project is to bring a national best practice model from other cities to Dallas, do a demonstration project. Right. I think we're going to show that this provides great housing, stabilizes people, and improves their lives. It's not transitional, it's permanent. A person could live here 50 years if they wanted to.
But this ain't the first time you did this. And when I say
true.
Ain't the first time, I meant that. 511 Akard Street. Yeah. Talk a little bit about 511.
Woo. We bought that building. We got that building under contract. It had been vacant for 20 years, right across from Lincoln Plaza, right across from the YMCA. We bought that. We got that building under contract in 2006, and used various kinds of tax credits to do a gut rehab on it. And so today, we have office retail from basement through 3. We have 200 apartments, 100 of which are set aside for formerly homeless persons, or for persons who were on the cusp of being homeless or in and out of homelessness. And then 100 apartments are set aside for workforce housing. You can earn up to $30,000 a year and still live there. If you earn more than that, you can't stay.
Okay.
So it's affordable housing downtown.
Downtown, affordable housing.
Took us a long time. It was a hard project. Let's just put it that way. But it's working well.
What's the relationship, or is there a relationship between homelessness and poverty?
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to me.
Well, if you get to know people who are on the street and you listen to their stories with respect, and they begin to tell you the truth about their lives, the reason they're on the street is not very different from some of the things most of us have encountered in the normal course of life. It's just that when I encounter those things, I have such a robust support network around me, yes, that when I stumble or fall or have a problem, a whole bunch of people rush toward that situation to help me out. I have resources to deal with that. That's it. But if I don't have health insurance, right, and I get sick, or I'm driving to work and I have a really bad car wreck, or I make a mistake and drive that car while intoxicated, or I develop an addiction because of some trauma in my life. I think if we don't approach compassionate service with the understanding that there is deep human trauma, yes, that's unaddressed and that is being dealt with by people who have limited social and financial resources, we're never going to get it. The golden rule is real important.
Yeah, it is.
You know, just I want to do to you like I want you to do to me.
That's true.
And if we get to that point, then we can get down to it, right?
Right.
But if you start unpacking these stories, there are common threads. You know, generational poverty, unforeseen tragedy, accidents, health issues, sexual abuse, domestic violence, alcoholism, drug addiction, often beginning with some tragedy or trauma, and people self-medicate. I mean, this kind of thing is happening in University Park.
Yeah.
It's in the Park Cities. It's in McKinney. It's in Allen.
Right.
You know, it's everywhere. But in the poor neighborhoods where the resources do not exist, it's more difficult to cover all that up.
You know, fight or flight.
So that's why there's always going to be a political dimension.
Yep.
We don't have the political will we need in this city to address the depth of the poverty. People say all the time Dallas is the tale of two cities. I don't agree with that. It's the untold tale of one city, and that's the poor city.
Yep.
1 out of 10 Dallasites make less than $10,000 a year. The current minimum wage, if you work full time at $7.25 an hour, gets you about $15,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah, we all will be.
30% of Dallas is poor. But what people don't recognize is, in some neighborhoods, in some census tracts, and some zip code areas, 100% of people are poor. When you average it out, you get to 30. But in the hot spots, everybody's poor.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work socially, spiritually, psychologically, relationally.
Yeah, I was asked by a colleague to ask you about capitalism and about your capitalist agenda and your Christian agenda. He asked me to ask you, do they agree with each other?
There's an awful, well, I never think of capitalism as being a Christian system. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Nor do I necessarily think of socialism as a Christian system per se. I will say, however, that what I read in the Torah, in the Hebrew Bible, what I read in the music of Israel, what I read in the prophetic literature of the Hebrew Bible, and what I see carried over from that rich tradition into the life of Jesus and what he says. And then as I watch that kind of hammered out in the rest of the Christian literature that's in the Bible, there's a whole lot more in common there with socialism's thinking than there is with dog-eat-dog capitalism.
Okay.
So there's got to be some kind of a amelioration, if you will, or softening of this cutthroat capitalism.
I got two things on the mind, just flew to the mind right quick. What do you know about the Resource Center that used to be here?
The Day Resource Center?
Yes, sir.
Very little. I know it was crowded.
Yeah.
It was not well kept.
Okay.
And it was felt by a lot of the community when it closed that was a tragedy that it was closed.
Yeah.
Because it had become a very go-to place for the people who used it. And I remember that my good friend Dr. Joe Clifford at First Presbyterian Church opened his parking lot. Yeah. Joe's my buddy. That's a good dude. So he's a very good dude. And Joe opened his parking lot, if you remember, when they closed the Day Resource Center.
They actually had an article in the Dallas Morning News about it as well, I believe. He's preached about it before. Yeah. So I asked you about that, and you tell me, well, it wasn't well kept, and it was a go-to place. Mm-hmm. What about your Opportunity Center? Are we destined to that same fate?
I hope we're destined to the fate of it being a go-to place. We're going to do our very best to keep it out of respect for our customers.
Amen. We're
going to do our very best to keep it tidy and welcoming. Now, the one thing to understand about CitySquare, last year we engaged over 50,000 different people.
I know.
So our major focus is not on homelessness. Our major focus is on working poor people, just in terms of who our customers are. So And the Opportunity Center is not going to be a place where people just hang out. I mean, unfortunately, we have to bring a level of professionalism to people that benefits them and gets them on a step up and out into a better life. That's true also of homeless people. And if homeless people, people who are dealing with homelessness, I hate homeless people. People are people. But
outdoor individuals.
There you go. Outdoor individuals, whether by choice or not, right?
Whether by choice or not.
If they need a place to be during the day, we're going to have lots of opportunities for them to be in our place and volunteer, like Miss Ortiz. That's been our model for 20 years. Yeah. So, and I've found that on the corner, talking to friends there, and the reason I go to the corner, by the way, is we don't want to go into any neighborhood where we don't know people and where we're not known.
The corner, where is it?
It's at Dawson and Malcolm X.
Dawson and
right
Malcolm
there by
X.
Billy Marandino's filling station.
And so you always, I heard Thursdays at 2 o'clock?
Thursdays at 2 o'clock.
Cool. So Thursdays at 2 o'clock, if
we're
you want to meet
there.
Larry James and actually have conversation, look for a white guy, gray hair, really nice dressed, down to earth. Down to earth. Hey, y'all, stay tuned. When people come into the bridge, I would greet them and I'd say, listen, these are the things that will help you here. Or there are people who say, oh, where's the homeless shelter? And I'd stop what I'm doing and I'd walk them over to the bridge. And I'd say, listen, the whole time we're walking, I'm giving them the play-by-play. Listen, when you go in here, this is what needs to happen. And so I've had youngsters come to me, and when I say youngsters, I've had people who are maybe 18, 19 years old, and I say, listen, everybody in here is a book. It's your choice to read that book. Mm-hmm. And if they're older, generally, they'll give you the game. If they're there, they recognize why they're there, and they'll share their story with you. And that's not just with you or me or it's with anybody who is willing to engage them as a respectful or as a respectable human being.
Absolutely.
So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, my father was a sharecropper before World War II in West Texas. And then he went on to a business career in Dallas and did real well. But one of the things he taught me just day by day is there are no disposable people. Everyone is worthy of respect. And everyone's got just as much right to their opinion as you got to yours. And you got something to learn from everybody. So don't be thinking you got all the answers to everything in life. And my dad didn't say that to me in so many words, but I just saw him do that. So I'm just not afraid of people.
Right.
And matter of fact, when we were developing 511 North Akard, I used to initiate conversations with people on the street who were obviously homeless.
You have to do that.
I would walk up behind the guy holding a sign. I'd walk up from behind and tap him on the shoulder and start a conversation. Yeah. Or I'd find some guy just sitting on the corner. I'd just sit down beside him and I'd just say, well, if you could get an apartment where there wasn't any time limit on how long you stayed there, would you be interested? Well, that set off all kinds of conversations. Yeah. And people were like, all the game went out of the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I started it.
You got an option that I never knew existed.
Yeah. And the fact that I would walk up to somebody and say, hey, man, I need your help. I need your opinion. Mm-hmm. You've got something of value that I need to get if you'll just give me some of it.
Right.
So I'm not afraid. And here's what I've learned on the corner and on the street.
Yes, sir.
You know the English idiom, pat on the back?
Okay.
Pat on the back. That is literally one of the most important things you can give to somebody. And I mean literally touch them. And touch them on the back and say, hey, it's good to see you, man. I love you. What's up? Or shake their hand and look them in the eye. And, and not as some technique. Right. But it's just, this is what we do as human beings, right?
We're built for community.
We're built for community and we're built for embrace.
Amen.
And so there are so many guys, mostly men, that I know on that corner who are dying for human contact, dying for respect, just looking for a place where they don't got to worry about nothing.
Yeah.
Except just being alive.
The library has taken that role. And
I think the resource center may have been like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Because the people that have been on the show, they talk about that day resource center, man. And it's crazy because they're looking for that. And the library has taken that place. And the people here at the library so graciously put me on this mic because they want to figure out how do we do what you asked about? How do we allow that person to fulfill that yearning to be human, to be in community with other individuals? Because that's what the library is all about.
Yeah.
No matter how you see it, it's about access to an equality, to a resource.
Our mission at CitySquare is to fight the causes and effects of poverty through service, advocacy, and friendship.
Good.
So we're serving because people are in a crisis, right? Mm-hmm. We're advocates because we want to change the system. But if we leave the friendship part out, we're going to miss it.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true. So what do you do to perpetuate friendship here at the library?
Yeah, if I was coming to the library, I'd just hang out and talk to people, probably. I mean, I don't know what kind of library this is in terms of community, but I've had a number of occasions to be in Abilene at Abilene Christian University. Right. They actually are leasing the second floor of our building downtown. They're opening an urban campus. Okay. It's with a focus on urban ministry and urban studies. Anyway, if you go to the Abilene Library, the ACU library on campus in Abilene, Texas, they now have what I would call a talking's okay policy. And they've got a huge coffee bar. So you can go into the stacks. You can go into the stacks with coffee and pastry, and you can they got all these spaces where I call them ideation spaces.
Yes.
Where students just hang around and work on problems.
Yeah.
Like they're in a living room. And so it's a very dynamic place. It's not quiet. There's no
finger on your mouth like church.
Gray-haired ladies running around telling you shh all the time.
Really?
It's more of a community space where exploration accompanies learning, right?
Yes.
And human relationships are built.
That's what we do here at this library. That's what we do here. We have an actual coffee and conversation where we get together with everybody, no matter who you are, where you can come in and have conversation with an individual about a wide range of things. You'd be surprised at what you'd find out. Yeah. I have a friend right now, homeless guy. Know him really, really well. Really good friend. He's been begging me, hey, guy, the first time you went, you told me you met somebody that does woodworking. Please find that person for me. And I'm like, come on, Rico. I mean, that was the first time. But if you come up there and you mingle and you begin to talk to these individuals, you'll never know what kind of opportunities arise from that.
Right.
So when you get those type of opportunities, man, you never know who you run into. Like I ran into the co-host. I ran into Jasmine. Jasmine's freaking awesome. Jasmine, Africa Wilder Kallenberg, please talk about the dichotomy between you and I and how it fits in with the library and y'all's.
Well, I think what's probably the most important thing, and I think it comes from a lot of what Larry is saying, is just connecting with people on a human level. And I think libraries are not necessarily the best at relationship building. I think our policies of being quiet and staying to yourself, and your librarians are going to sit behind their desk and passively wait for somebody to engage them, that's a huge problem for libraries. So when you see that urban libraries are the ones being inundated with homeless people, you can see why this is a problem. I mean, you have these, for the most part, really opposite personalities. I know for a lot of our homeless customers here at the library are extroverts. They have personalities, and so they have opinions, and they want to talk about things, and they want to challenge authority, and they want to defend their rights to certain things. And they tend to be the more troublemakers, right? And so, but then you have staff at the library, librarians, a person who traditionally goes, yes, it's their job, but a person who traditionally goes into library school is not an extrovert. Right. Newsflash, they tend to be introverts, and they tend not to know how to engage in conversation, certainly not cold conversation, and certainly not with people who don't look or talk like they do. Right. So, libraries being this traditional institution, we have all these changes happening in technology, but more so, we have a huge change upon us that we've sort of been reluctant to even address in relationships and in our customer base and being able to talk to them. So, I had a librarian call me from a library in the Metroplex, and I was telling her about our coffee and conversation program. And I told her, do you guys know any of the names of your customers that come into that building every day and stay in your building every day? Well, no. And I said, well, one of the first things your staff needs to do is introduce themselves to some of your customers. Go up to them. She goes, well, I mean, is there a law against asking somebody their name in a public library? And I said, if there was, that would be the worst law ever written and a waste of our system. There is no law. You can't ask. No one has to provide you their name. But just that mentality, the librarians sit back and they're not used to thinking that it's on them to have to go have conversations. Now, if you want to sort of claim your territory, if you want to say, this is my third floor, okay, you have to engage people. You have to greet them when they come in. You have to know their name, and they're going to be more accountable to you, and you're going to have a better relationship with them.
Lead by example. Don't follow by conformity. So here's the question. Do you want to ask Larry James how to do it? Because he's one of the guys, like, I'm a foot soldier, and I do that. I engage people readily. Larry James has been doing this before I was born, so you got that opportunity.
So here's my story with Larry James. I would say that he's already taught me. Everything that I've been doing here in this library has been in part due to what I learned when I actually worked with the CitySquare and Larry program.
Did you?
Yes, and that was back in 2007, and I think that's what makes me sort of an atypical librarian. I call myself a learning librarian who's really more of a public servant, and I'm more about developing community. And when I was an AmeriCorps member with CitySquare, I learned about something called the asset-based community development model. The idea that the community has the wealth, that they have the resources to help solve their own problems, and they're going to help you more than anybody. And I realized that sort of sat with me for a very long time, and I think that, and I didn't know the coffee story. I didn't know that you set up the coffee, but in our conversation, Rashad, I mean, coffee came up, and of course, we love coffee, and coffee lends to conversation. Caffeine helps to kind of loosen us up and get us chattery. And so I would say both of those things, certainly have come from Larry James and just my experience with CitySquare.
So since you guys do this, and, I'm actually trying to learn, how would you rate the effectiveness of the model that you guys learn in comparison to what we generalize in everyday life as far as communication with other individuals?
Well, I will say what I feel like we can still learn, probably together as an ongoing thing, is I feel like Larry's done a really great job of instilling this sort of mental shift in his staff and in people that he works with. I know that you guys call your customers neighbors, and I remember that when I was at CitySquare. And for us here at the library, we've tried to shift mentalities as well by calling the homeless our customers experiencing homelessness, because they are our customers first and foremost. If they're in our building, they're our customers who happen to be experiencing homelessness. So I would ask Larry, how do we continue to change the mentalities of our staff so that we can continue working and developing relationships with our community, and then how do we help the community to also change their
Excellent
mentality?
question.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, as much as possible, you try to put yourself in the shoes of your customer. You talk to your customer. You inquire as to what your customer is here for, what their desires are, what their mission is, and then you begin to work to honor that and fulfill that. People don't need me. Yeah. That's one of the realizations I've come to. People don't need me. Oh, we all need each other in that sense, but they don't need me. What they need is an opportunity and a fair chance. And if someone comes into this library with a mission on their mind, and you're engaging them to understand what that is, and you're walking alongside them to enable that to happen, then that's a success. I would argue that the people who are homeless who come into this library, if they had an ideation room that was dedicated to their purposes, and they begin to take up the questions related to the condition of being outside, they could come up with solutions this community ought to engage.
The problem I have is this. Being a foot soldier, I feel like we need more individuals who actually pass these resources out. This being a platform right here where I can speak that out, I'm going to say this because it needs to be said. Those individuals are there not just to help the homeless, but to help everybody who is in need of resources. They're there, and I don't think anybody's really tapping into it as well as they could be.
Well, I think what we need is more Rashads, in the sense that more people within the community who want to step up into more active roles to help support their community. And I know that
absolutely. If you have a problem, so where do you go to get knowledge about a problem? You go to the persons who are closest to the problem. Well, who's closest to the problem?
Rashad.
Well, you were last night. You got sore ribs this morning, right?
Yeah, I did.
So that's the kind of proximity I'm looking for.
Right.
Because if I want to know something about that experience, I'm not going to go off in some corner and read a book and write a paper. I'm going to come talk to you.
Right. Volunteer.
Well, and our ideas have to come from the community.
Absolutely.
And when people ask, how did the podcast come about, or how did Coffee and Conversation come about? And I said, I talked with Rashad, and Rashad told me, he gave me his wisdom from his years on the streets and with the rest of the homeless community. And I didn't just come up with this idea myself. I didn't just decide this was going to be a great idea. I mean, librarians do that all the time.
So does the library have any kind of program, intentionally designed program to relate to homeless customers?
We're doing Tai Chi. We're doing photography.
So why didn't the library hire him?
Oh, yeah. Well,
the director of homeless outreach.
We're informally, we've been formally hired, Rashad. Well, so I would say that homelessness has been an issue in our libraries for a long time. But since September, after a conversation we had in June of last year, we started our homeless engagement initiative. So we are starting an initiative. We have no funding. We have no grants to support this other than the wealth of our creativity and resources right now. And we've decided that we're going to take this on and we're going to own up to it. We're not going to sit back and feel like victims to this issue. We're going to own up to this, and we're going to be the moral pillar that society needs us to be to defend the rights that the homeless have to our building and to information. And with that, we've hired our 2 AmeriCorps members from CitySquare, who are year-round, who've been here for the past 8 months. Mm-hmm. And they've helped us to build some relationships. Then we started Coffee and Conversation. We're doing this podcast. We hope to start an annual forum. After this podcast, we would like to bring all of the agency representatives, bring the homeless together here in this library, and have a think tank and talk about really bringing that homeless perspective and ideas to the table.
One of the things I learned, and it is shocking and amazing, is that when you said you were that pillar, I then already had to be that pillar. There are a lot of things I could get frustrated and mad about, and one of my recent revelations is problems only frustrate people. When you steadily giving me the problem, I want a solution. I'm like, yo, yes, this is going on. Yes, this is going on. And it is internally frustrating, but a solution. And so us working together is solely volunteer. And when I hear you say, we put, would you like to help us on the bottom of that information, on the bottom of your sheet, man, that's extremely powerful. And I don't know if people understand the power of volunteer work, because here's my issue. If I can't find a job and I can't find an apartment, then I have to abide my time some kind of way. I have to take my time. Generally, and we've always talked about how the homeless or outside individuals take a spiritual approach to that. And so generally, what I love about spirituality, or what I love about the Bible and its vastness of wisdom and knowledge and understanding, is that, the love. There's a place where we could actually experience love and say, these are the characteristics of love. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, these are the characteristics of love. I appreciate that. But then love is also a verb. And so with it being a verb, and me having all the time in the world to look at all the things that's going on, problems, issues, I could actually become a pillar, like you said, and be a pillar. I might not be working toward that goal of, autonomy, self-sufficiency. But when I find something that makes me feel whole and makes me feel like I'm sustained internally, then I don't have to worry about anything else. Don't get me wrong. I agree with Maslow. He's got good sense. He's solid in his theology or his psychology. But man, for me, spirituality is where it's at, on the strength of internally being whole. I may not have what I want physically. I may not have that bed. I may not have, the cup of coffee when I want it. It may be $1.65. Ooh, that made me mad this morning.
Do you know? Do you know a guy named Blue?
Blue.
Blue hangs out over on the corner.
Is he African American?
Yeah. Tall, thin, always wears blue.
No.
Okay, so Blue has taken it upon himself to be the night watchman for the Marandino filling station.
Okay.
And the Marandinos are really good to people. They're very nice people.
Yes.
So I'm over there one day, and I noticed Blue sitting down on the steps next to this house. And he's reading something. He's got a book. So I go down there to see Blue, and he's reading Thomas Merton. The book is entitled Thoughts in Solitude. Well, this is heavy.
Yeah.
You know,
That's good literature. Yeah.
Monastic, mysticism.
Right.
And Blue, he calls me down there. He says, read this paragraph. So I read this paragraph. It's profound stuff.
Yes.
There's this guy on the street. Got some problems.
Right.
But trying to take care of his soul. So we're all the same. That's the other thing about people and meeting people. Hey, you know what? We're all the same. Yeah. We're really all the same. We're very unique, and every individual is different at one level. But the basics are all the same.
Y'all stay tuned. I got something else I want to ask. I can't help but think about some of the different guests and how they've contributed and brought some different things to the table. One of the things that I and my co-host really, really liked was Wayne Walker when he came. Wayne Walker over OC, again, which I like to call the Homeless Cafe, which is actually about 2 blocks down from CitySquare on Haskell. That's actually how I heard about you guys. Anyway, Wayne Walker came on and he's talking about, even Jesus said, the poor you have with you always. What do you think about that?
Well, that's the one thing I wish he hadn't said. Because either that or I wish he had said more, because there's more to say there.
Yes.
This woman comes in to give him a beautiful gift, and Judas and the others
hate us. What Judas?
Yeah, Judas. Who's he to be talking like this? Why wasn't this sold and given to the poor? Blah blah blah. Well, Jesus is quoting Scripture when he says, "The poor you'll have with you always." He's actually quoting from Deuteronomy chapter 11, and right at the bottom of that passage, 1 through 15, around verse 15. The statement is made, the poor you'll have with you always. But in the beginning, the statement is made, attributed to God. God says, there shall be no poor among you if you are careful to do all that I've commanded you.
Beautiful.
And it's almost like God's having a conversation with God. So God says, if you just do what I say, people, there won't be any poor people here. And that included things like forgiveness of debt.
Yeah.
The land acquisition being returned to the original owners every 70 years, the Jubilee. People loaning freely in the 7-year intervals between the forgiveness of debt. The release of captives and slaves periodically in the nation of Israel. There's a social system set up by God to eliminate injustice.
Ain't that something?
Ain't that something? So God's having a conversation with God, and God tells the people what he wants, and then God says, but I know who you are, so if perchance some poor dude shows up, don't be tight-fisted or hard-hearted. Lend freely, and don't think about the 7 years when it's going to be forgiven. Don't calculate the time. Just give people what they need. And then God says, but I really know you people. You're not going to do that. You're going to be rebellious and hard-hearted to the day you die, just like you are. So the poor are going to be with you always. Help them. So for Jesus, when Jesus quotes that to get Judas off his back, he's not telling the whole story, which is the reason we got poor people is because you're not doing what God said.
What thus said the Lord. Man, that's it.
And that goes to this capitalism thing we were talking about earlier.
Right.
When you talk about the land reverting to the original owners every 50 years, all the debt being forgiven every 7 years, the slaves being released in the Jubilee year. And Israel, according to Jeremiah and the writer of Chronicles, Israel went into captivity because they didn't celebrate the Jubilee year. They never celebrated the Jubilee year.
Wow. That's crazy.
And it's all about economics and equity.
One other thing Pastor Wayne mentioned was he was a bit skeptical of the housing first model. He said that he gets a lot of people into the Our Calling Cafe that have received housing, and they end up either not equipped to handle that sort of independence, or they end up in housing in the most crack and prostitute-infested apartments in Dallas. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would like to know more about those programs, because it sounds to me like what you have there is a community with no support. And Housing First has a couple of dimensions. One is you put a person into housing as quickly as possible, regardless of what problems they're continuing to exhibit. That's one thing. And then you wrap around the support they need to be successful with their life mission. There are these models all over the country. The research says that 87% of the people you see on the street today could stabilize largely on their own if they had permanent housing, if they didn't have this deadline hanging over their head, and if they had supportive services around them. The Cottages will be the first genuinely Housing First model. We've been all over the country looking at these models. There's one that's amazing in Seattle. It's called 1811 East Lake. If you Google 1811 East Lake, you'll go to that site. 75 of the most expensive homeless persons to King County are living there. And we went up there with a group from Fort Worth and Austin and Houston and Dallas. And we asked the guy who ran it. He's a salty old dude, PhD in political science from the University of Texas. He's been up there for 30 years. And we asked him, how in the world did he get away with his approach? Because if you're an alcoholic living in that building and you fall off the wagon, you don't lose your housing. You can't bring your mess into the common areas. But if you fall off the wagon like anybody else might in any neighborhood in Dallas, you don't lose your housing just because of that. And someone from the Texas delegation said, man, how'd you sell that in Seattle? And the guy said, well, a fact and a question. The fact is, I'm saving the taxpayers of King County X millions of dollars a year, because these are the most expensive and costly people to take care of on the street. And the question is, do you want these people back out on the street, inebriated, intoxicated, and stoned out of their mind? Or would you prefer, from a public safety standpoint, to have them in my building where me and my staff can care for them? Well, that common sense is what Housing First is all about. And we've never tried it here because we think we know what's best for everybody. I'm going to prescribe for you what I think you need. And unless you accept what I prescribe, then you're not going to be able to stay. Humility is about not just how you treat people. It's also about how you manage your mind. And that means that we have to be open. And that if we're really concerned for each other, then we're going to be looking for the best that we can deliver. And if we don't have an open mind, inquisitive mind, if we're not students, right, then we're not going to get where we need to be.
So it seems like even with the cottages are going to be highly concentrated with the most chronically homeless people in Dallas, 50 of the most. And I know that for us at the library, one of the foundational ideas is that we feel like people have a fear of homeless people, and homeless people maybe don't mingle with housed people as often. So I've asked some homeless people, how many of your friends are housed? Well, they're not many. Maybe their family that they connect with in another state or another city, or and so I know that for us, we really are trying to offer as many opportunities for intermingling as possible, to expose the homeless to the housed to the homeless, to remind us that we're all the same. So when I hear about projects where you're concentrating that sort of people with similar dysfunctions, that concerns me, because I think that it lends to just continuing to marginalize a group together.
Well, I appreciate those concerns. A couple of realities. Mixed income housing is virtually impossible to site in Dallas, Texas. So if I bring my project to, let's say, North Oak Cliff or Old East Dallas, or even Fraser neighborhood, I promise you, I promise you, I won't be able to site it there. Because to develop it, I've got to have public funds. And to get public funds, I've got to go before the public tribunals, either the county or the city, even the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. And when I get there, I'm going to be bit by NIMBYism, not in my backyard. I mean, even the liberals don't want these things near them. The second part of my answer, and that's tragic, I think that's terrible, and until we get over that, we're not going to have the kind of community we want. We're just going to keep forcing people out to the outer suburban rings, and we're going to have to keep rebuilding the inner suburbs, and we're not going to have what you're suggesting. It's a hard problem. The second thing is 50 people living together in a gated community being treated with great respect are going to be given something they haven't had before, and that is space and leisure to more adequately organize themselves as a community. And one thing I've encountered in terms of trying to provide housing for people who are on the street, who are outside, is I can't tell you the number of apartments we've been able to line up for people who when faced with that opportunity have said, no, I can't take it. And one of the main reasons is I can't leave my friends. They're all, if I leave, what will happen?
Right.
That's one thing Rashad actually told me the first time we met as well.
So, I mean, this is going to be a delightful development with lots of support, lots of fun, lots of activities, and I promise you the mental health requirement will go way down. As this community becomes real, the need for psychotropic interventions is going to decline.
Yeah.
That said,
Yes.
I wish it were the way you said it was. I wish we could put 50 of these cottages in the neighborhood where I live, rather than just...
Well, and I'd read some research that said that one of the reasons that homeless individuals visit the public library, because it's one of the very few public spaces where they can intermingle with housed people and remind themselves of their formerly homeless self. You know, this sort of this vision of, oh, I might want to be more like this again, you know, and not to say that the way a housed person lives is any better than a homeless person, but that exposure,
and
that
healthier.
Exactly.
It's healthier.
It'd be better on your ribs.
I mean, I say this. I always talk about the 4 aspects of an individual: physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional. Emotionally, I find it very stimulating to be around a vast amount of people. I think we talked about that starting off. Spiritually, I think it's a whole lot greater when you're not burdened with the task of self-sufficiency. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I want to be lazy or foolish. Because again, physically, it is very harsh. The elements will slap the out of you. And so, that's in
511 North Akard, we have a mixed community. Yeah. You know, we have 100 units that are basically homeless, and we have 100 units that are working people. Yeah. And we have 43 children.
Do you think that'll be the last of that kind here in Dallas?
I hope not. We got our eyes on a couple of projects, but I hope we can do some.
Well, I know if any man could do it in this city, it's going to be you.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll say this. Intrinsically, I'm thinking about what you have there. How y'all talked about that dichotomy of sticking people together who already have a similar attitude. What it takes a pillar, a volunteer. It takes a volunteer. It does not take a person that is working for some kind of fiscal means to rectify a situation that is beyond control. On your think, you said we would have to invest in the individuals who were considered the least, but Dallas doesn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. Let's talk a little bit about CitySquare, because sitting with Daniel, I got that. Like, I really, really got what he was really feeling. Are you leaving?
No, I'm not leaving. I do have underway, I'm 64 years old, right? So,
look good, man.
I appreciate that. I have underway a succession strategy development team, and we're meeting to talk about what's coming next, because I'm not going to be here forever. None of us are, right? So I envision by the time I'm 66, turning over the CEO part of my job to somebody else. And hopefully I would be able to stay on as president and do 2 or 3 things. One, help the organization financially, continue to raise money and funding, because that's a big problem. We have to raise $32,000 a day
Yeah, I heard big kudos to you too.
And that's lots of money.
Time is money, huh?
So it is. So I'm going to hopefully help Sean Wills, who's our Chief Development Officer, with that. And then support the vision of the CEO, whatever that is. And I know there's going to be changes because everybody's got different ways of doing things and different visions. I've been through this once before when I left my church after 14 years, and I had not one moment's problem with that.
Yeah.
So I realize this is a little bit different, but I'm feeling really excited about supporting somebody else's vision because it's a fact. When you hit my age, you lose a step.
Nah.
You lose a step, or your step becomes different.
Yeah.
And I think you're fooling yourself if you think that young people can't do it as good or better than you.
Right.
So it'll be a time to do that, right? So, and then I want to write some more stuff.
Really?
Yeah, I want to raise money, support the new leader's vision, and I got some things I want to write, some more stuff I want to write.
I think when you get older,
and then I can work till I'm 70 or so, right? And maybe work on some of these housing deals that are kind of, by definition, they're offline.
I think when you get older, you get just a little bit of finesse. Man, you got some finesse, man. You got pizzazz, man.
Thanks for having me on your show.
Man, I love that you came. I mean,
my pleasure and honor.
From CitySquare to the Taskforce to the corner, man, you're everywhere. We appreciate you here.
Thanks.
You being here. You see, we all working toward a common goal, and it's good to have people in this room. You having to be the endorser of what you want to see come to fruition is so important. So here's what we'll do. We'll get up from the table and we will live this thing.
There you go.
That's what we'll do.
I like that.
We will live it. Let's pray. God of heaven, I learned something today about you. I learned that I have to come boldly and be patient and be humble. I learned that you recognize who I am because you tell me how to live through others. And I'm grateful for that. I can't live on my own here and expect to get the results that I like to have. Even you are a God of communication, a God of unity. So while I have my brothers and my sisters here, everybody that's listening, I just want to say thank you. Not just for me, but on behalf of us all, we say thank you. We say thank you for life because somebody didn't wake, somebody ain't breathing, somebody's going through something right now where they need you and they may not know that it's beneficial to call upon you. So I call upon you right now and say, please have mercy on the people who are trying to live together in harmony, in love and in peace. I pray in the name of the Prince of Peace, in the name of somebody that actually reached out in humility, in structure, and also in love, far greater than we could ever understand. I pray in the name of Jesus Christ that you keep us, protect us, and be glorified in us. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Street View. You can visit us online at streetviewpodcast.com. Tune us in again next time for more discussion.